Let's continue. Let's go back to Kemavur Bekama Mekaimis. We'll go from there, page 270. 270. Okay, so we're in the Sicha, and we're the Sicha Kam Rabba Shachtel Rab Zera, the famous Sicha on the Gemara, but we're not learning it from Likutei Sichas volume Lamed Aleph, where it's printed. We're learning it from an earlier version of the edited Sicha of the Rebbe, which is printed in the back of Likutei Sichas volume 27 on page 2. We're on page 270 now. It begins on page 267. We're on page 270. So we addressed already the Gemara and the difficulties with the Gemara, and in order to understand it, the Rebbe prefaces it by introducing the story of Nadav and Avihu. So last class we talked about the fact that Nadav and Avihu, we're all familiar with the story. Nadav and Avihu were Aaron's sons, and during the inauguration of the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, they entered into the Mishkan, they entered into the tabernacle with incense, and they died. It says, Vateitze Eish Mifnei Hashem, a fire came out from the Holy of Holies and entered their nostrils and took their lives, and they died. We discussed the fact that story seems problematic. There are all kinds of mixed messages. What they did, was it okay or was it not okay? Did they do a good thing or a bad thing? Were they punished? Were they not punished? Were they holy? Were they not holy? We talked about the fact that it says in the pasuk that they died while they were bringing a foreign incense. Bringing something foreign is seemingly a negative thing, but that's not the reason that they died. Rashi says one of the reasons the Machlekes Rashi brings two opinions, but the opinion that we're concerned with here is that they came into the Mishkan drunk. And that's why they died. So if you read that, and the proof for that is the juxtaposition of the narrative in the Chumash, where right after the story, the next thing that it tells us is that a kohen should not come into the temple to serve while drunk, after having had some wine. So the fact that right after that story comes this thing, this prohibition against drinking wine, so that leads us to conclude that we're following what they did. They came in drunk, intoxicated, and therefore Hashem tells Aaron afterwards not to do that. So then what does that mean? It would mean that they did something wrong. And if you think about it, how do two righteous individuals decide to get drunk and walk in like a couple of college kids? They decide in their drunkenness we're going to go in and start. How does that happen? The thing is, besides for that also, why is it that if that's such a terrible thing, if they hadn't been commanded not to go in drunk, then why would they deserve to die? Why it wouldn't be a capital offense? God hadn't commanded them not to go in drunk. So you could say that it was really disrespectful, it wasn't nice, but for that they deserve to die. It was something that they weren't prohibited to do. It wasn't illegal for them to do that. So that seems also a bit harsh. So something's missing from there. But furthermore, within the story itself, what does Moshe tell Aaron afterwards? He consoles his brother after losing his two oldest children. He says that I realize now that they were even holier than us, that they're even greater. That God said that He's going to sanctify the temple. He will be sanctified in the temple by those that are close to Him. And now I see that it was them. That this is sort of the sanctification of God and of the temple was the death of your two sons. Well then, so was it a good thing or a bad thing? Was he just trying to, was he being sarcastic? Was he just, trying to make his, the boy's father feel good by saying that they were wonderful? Obviously not. Obviously he meant it. So B'krevei HaKadosh. So what's going on? So we explained from the Eir HaChaim HaKadosh who says something incredible. The Eir HaChaim in Parshas Achrei Mois, where in that parsha opens with the words after the death of the children of Aaron. And over there, the pasuk says, "Bekarvasam lifnei Hashem vayamusu," that their death came as a result of coming close to Hashem. Which, in other words, the simple understanding of the verse is that they died when they had entered the temple. Doesn't say that that's the reason why, but if you read the words more closely, more literally, you could read it that way. That why did they die? They died because they were coming close to Hashem. Bekarvasam lifnei Hashem, they were coming close to God, vayamusu, and therefore they died. And the Shalah basically explains like this. He says that Nadav and Avihu had expired. It wasn't that they were punished with capital punishment as a result of their terrible actions, but that they had this yearning and burning desire to connect to Hashem and to expire. When a person is so overwhelmed by something that they desire, You want nothing else but to expire into it, to melt into it, to lose yourself into it. An example of, and this is called kaleis hanefesh. The kaleis hanefesh means both the yearning of the soul and the melting, the dissipating of the soul. Just like a candle, where the flame tries to get off the wick. It wants to connect back to its source, which is beyond the sun. And the flame knows good and well that it only exists because it's attached to the wick. The moment it leaves the wick, it ceases to exist. But it wants nothing more than to disconnect from the wick, to cease to exist, but to become totally absorbed within its source. The same is true with our souls. Our souls are constantly ner Hashem nishmas adam. The soul is compared to a candle. It wants nothing more than to connect to its yearning. Its own personal interest is to connect with God, is to expire into godliness. That's the soul's interest. So that's kaleis hanefesh. That is the meaning of this ecstatic experience that the soul wants to experience, which is to totally lose itself, to totally expire, to release itself from being tethered to the body, and expire into godliness. And that's what Nadav and Avihu, that's what they wanted. And so therefore they bring ketayros, they offer an incense. Incense represents that oneness with Hashem. Ketayros, the word ketayros comes from the word ketira. It means oneness, a certain unity. They wanted to experience that oneness with God. Well, the pasuk says, we quoted in last class, it says, Ba'akrivam eish zara, they brought a foreign flame. So the Rebbe explains, what does it mean they brought a foreign flame? Not that it was, the fact that it was foreign means not that it was foreign, meaning that it was something that was unacceptable. It was foreign in that it was foreign to the whole purpose of the Mishkan. The Mishkan, the word Mishkan, tabernacle, the word in Hebrew Mishkan means sheikhin, to rest. It's about God coming down into the world. The idea of expiring out into God, into godliness, is to leave this world. So the idea that their intention of bringing the ketayros, bringing their incense, was foreign to the whole concept and the whole function and the purpose of the Mishkan. That's what it means it was foreign. But that's what they wanted. And that's how now everything fits together. Except for one little point, which is the idea of shsuya yayin. What does it have to do with drinking? So the Rebbe explains, what does it mean that they were drinking? Drinking, yayin, the word yayin, wine, is the same numerical value as the word soid, which means secret, mystery. And that's why it says, nichnas yayin yatsa soid. Wine, person has wine, and the secrets come out. But what secrets are we referring to here? We're talking about the esoteric part of Torah, the mystery of Torah. And what is the secret part of Torah? What does Kabbalah talk about? It talks about God. And what happens when you study Kabbalah? You come to a certain feeling of closeness to God and a yearning to connect to God. The more you get to know Him, the more you want to expire into Him. And we'll get to that concept a little bit later as well. So the point is that they were shisuya yayin, that they were drunk, means they were drunk on Torah. They were high on Torah. They were high on Jewish mysticism. They were high on the secrets of Torah. They were high on godliness. And that's why they were so inspired and had this deep yearning to expire into God. So, but we've already said, we discussed right in the beginning that the Rebbe says we're kind of forced to explain the story in the Gemara. Getting back to our story in the Gemara about Rabbi and Reb Zera, we're forced to understand it literally. Why? Because there's a halacha that's learned from it. Because the story is not told in the legends of the Talmud, that it's told in the halachic part of Talmud, in the legal part. And so therefore, you can't learn a halacha from an agada. You can't learn from some kind of a story that's a metaphorical. You can't learn a practical halacha. So we're forced to learn that literally. In a sense, you could apply the same thing here. Right after the story of them entering, what does the pasuk say? A halacha. You can't drink wine. What kind of wine? Wine. It doesn't say you can't learn chassidus before serving in the temple. It says you can't drink wine, physical wine. And so we must also say that Nadav and Avihu also drank wine, literally. So what's the reason for that? So let's hold that question for a second, and let's first finish reading this concept inside, and then when we get to chapter 6, we'll tie it up, and then we'll move on and relate this all back to our story, to our Gemara that we're dealing with. So we're on page 270, the second to last paragraph on the page, so in the left column. It's explained in several places where we talk about the fact that Nadav and Avihu entered the Mishkan. They entered the temple having been intoxicated by wine. That what we mean by wine is the secrets and the inner dimension of Torah. Like the Gemara says, wine enters and secrets come out, meaning there's a link between wine and the secrets of Torah, the mystery of Torah. So that's wine. What does it mean, shesuya yayin, drunk on wine? Is so drunk by wine means drunk by the mysteries of Torah, means that they're so absorbed in the mysteries of Torah, in the secrets of Torah, in that aspect of Torah, that they have this feeling of wanting to expire themselves. Just like a person who's drunk is sort of not really contained by his body. You can roll down a flight of stairs and get right back up. I mean, you can endure a lot more because you're like, even in a physical sense, you're not as tied in and constricted and confined to your body and the fragility of your physical being. And so this is spiritually what happened. Intoxicated means that they were completely absorbed and consumed and lost drunk within the mysteries of Torah. So what's the difference between Nadav and Avihu and Aaron and Moshe? You're going to say that Nadav and Avihu were able to reach higher levels of insight in the mysteries of Torah than Aaron and Moshe? So how could that be? What was the difference between Nadav and Avihu and Aaron and Moshe, that by Aaron and Moshe, who didn't expire into godliness, they didn't die from this? Aaron and Moshe just had a greater mental capacity and emotional capacity and a broader vessel, a bigger vessel to be able to take this. Since they were of greater stature and a greater capacity, they were able to handle a lot more of the mystery of Torah without becoming drunk from it, without becoming intoxicated by it, meaning without having this feeling of expiring. The children of Aaron, so they're on a lower level. They're also called Moshe's children because Moshe taught them Torah. They were on a lower level. They were the children. They were the next level down. So they weren't able to handle it, and so therefore they expired. So this idea that they entered into the Beis Hamikdash, entered into the Mishkan, and they expire, what was it from? It was their own doing. It was kind of they were. Imagine there's a week-long celebration. The Shekhinah comes down into this world. The divine presence is palpable. You can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it in whatever way that was. It was overwhelming to them. It was so overwhelming that they wanted nothing else but to expire into it. That's what they wanted. And because they were on a lower level, in a sense, than Moshe and Aaron, they couldn't handle that awesome experience, and they expire within the experience. And for this reason, after this happens, what does Hashem say? After it happened, not before, but after this happens, that's when Hashem says, the next parsha says, don't drink wine or beer before coming into the temple. Meaning, yain derech shichrusei. What does it mean not to drink wine? Not to drink it in a way that you become drunk. Hainu, shekasher shoisim yain shebet. When a person drinks the wine of Torah, which is the seidus v'razim, the Torah, the secrets, and the mysterious parts of Torah, yizaru shaloi lavei lamatzav shal shichrus. You have to be careful not to get drunk from it, which means v'ibud kol mitziyusei. Ad delayada ad lekalesa nefesh. You shouldn't drink, you shouldn't get drunk, just like a person that's drunk loses all sense of self and self-awareness. The same idea, you can't go and immerse yourself in the mysteries of Torah to the point that you lose yourself in it. Meaning, you become drunk in it, which means that you now expire as a result of it. And the Rebbe says the term ad delayada here, right? The idea of till you don't even know, till there's no awareness, there's no more self-awareness. You have to do it. You have to approach it in a way, just as the Gemara talks about the four that entered the Pardes, entered into to experience the mysteries of Torah, and only one came out in peace. Others died or went crazy, but only Rabbi Akiva, I believe it is, right? Who's nichmas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. That kiyodu apirish b'zeh sha'knisa tzricha liyas b'shalom. The person has to go in peace. Meaning, ba'ifin kazeh she'bevadei tiyah yitziyah b'shalom. Neshamas b'gufim. The Rebbe addresses this elsewhere. The idea that four people enter into the Pardes, enter into the mysteries of Torah, and it says that, I think it was Rabbi Akiva, right? That was nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. He went in peace and came out in peace. So the question is, what do you mean? He went in peace. Everybody went in the same way. Everybody went in, with their wits about them. Everybody went in complete control, and only one came out. The difference between the one that came out and the others that didn't is that he was yatsa b'shalom, that he came out in peace. So what does it mean that why is it the Gemara emphasized nichras b'shalom v'yatsa b'shalom? He went in peace and came out in peace. So Rebbe explains this idea. The reason he came out in peace is because he went in peace, meaning he went in purposefully. He went in not oblivious to what was about to happen, and he went in with the purpose of coming out. So So when you go in, and the purpose of going in is to come out. In other words, when on your climb up, you're mindful of the fact that you need to come back down. So that's the key to coming out in peace. But others were totally lost in it. Were totally absorbed by it. So you have to not lose sight of that when you go in. In other words, you have to go in intentionally and purposefully for a reason. But before Hashem commands them not to drink wine, so a person was able to drink wine, meaning was able to experience this kalei nefesh, this total expiration. And that's why Moshe could say to Aaron afterwards and say truthfully that they're holier, because what they did was not wrong. It wasn't wrong for them. But now that, in other words, this form of serving Hashem, that a person's so overwhelmed that they just lose themselves entirely and they expire to the point that there's literal, actual death. They die as a result of that experience. That's a very sublime spiritual experience. Nothing should be wrong with that. That should be something to aspire to, right? And yet, and certainly it's a very romantic concept and very spiritual one. And yet, we can't do that. That's what Hashem commands afterwards. After this experience, Hashem says, for Nadav and Avihu, it was okay. And so there wasn't a sin. But now this can't be done anymore. This is not acceptable. You want to know why before was it okay and afterwards it wasn't?
No, why did they say it?
The whole tachlis is for them to be here.
Right.
So their tachlis was not to go in and then to...
Right. Okay. So the truth is, so what we're saying, based on what we're saying here, that's not the case. They weren't punished, and what they did was not sinful. For us to do it afterwards, so for us to do that afterwards, that would be unacceptable, right? Because now there's a commandment. So there's a difference between before Yain v'Shecher al Teish, before the commandment not to drink, and the commandment afterwards. There's a difference. So that's them. Now the question is, why even before? If the whole ultimate purpose is to come down here, why is that? So it's a good question. That's a good question.
They did it before, and for them it was okay.
Right. But he's asking, so why is it?
They was okay to do it, but you...
Right. So the thing is like this, in life there's always this tension, right? And the truth is that we have that as well. There's the only way that we can actually fulfill our purpose in this world is when we're always mindful of the fact that we don't really belong here. That we really want to be by God. That's that tension is what leads to it. Any kind of tension and friction is what propels things forward. So the same idea, just like Shabbos and the weekdays. You have 6 weekdays and you have Shabbos. If the purpose is l'sheves yitzara, to work this world, and the truth is, it's unacceptable. You can't celebrate Shabbos all week. If you did, that would be terrible. It's unacceptable. You have to work for 6 days. But so which one is it? Do you have to keep Shabbos or do you have to work? Which one is it? The answer is both. Shabbos enables you to go about working productively, and during the work week, the productive Misha Tarach Erev Shabbos Yechel b'Shabbos, the work allows you to go back into Shabbos and have your Shabbos be more meaningful and more purposeful, and they complement each other. So that's true internally for each and every one of us. There's always that, you can borrow the term, the yin and the yang, right? There's always those two elements that are pulling at us that allow us to actually fulfill our purpose down here. On a broader scale, though, sometimes you have people whose main focus is the shoiv, is the being down here, and others, the main purpose is the flight, the leaving here. And for that teaches the rest of us. So some people, not everybody has the same kind of mission. And that's why, the ultimate purpose, or one of the ultimate values in Yiddishkeit is for a person to settle down and get married and build a home, right? But not everybody ultimately is destined for that. And sometimes the reason for that is because even though that's the ultimate purpose, but there's some people have a different job that would inhibit them, or that life would inhibit them. We talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. We know what happened with him later in his family life. That was unique to him. And ultimately that creates a certain balance in the world. So there's some people, and we're going to see soon, we're going to get soon to another example of that where we bear out this point a little bit more, that both concepts, and these are the terms that are going to be useful, is ratzai and shoiv. Ratzai meaning a yearning to expire out, shoiv to return, to remember that you have a purpose down here, to remain and not to expire, not to follow that deep yearning. So each and every one of us have these dual forces. And then there are some people that are more embody the idea of shoiv, and other people that embody the principle of ratzei more, and together that creates sort of an overall general balance.
So they weren't punished as such. No, so I'm saying
they got exactly what they wanted.
What they did was their
right,
purpose,
and that was their purpose. And so for them it was fine. And then afterwards Hashem says, no, that was maybe for them. B'krevei HaKadosh, and now that's done. And where it happened at the Mishkan. That the whole then what comes out is the idea that the Mishkan, no, now that we're living in a post-Mishkan world, the whole idea is to bring it into here, into this world. But again, we also, all of us need those dual forces. We want to experience both of them. And we're going to see soon, the concept of Adla Yada, the Rebbe is saying here, you can't go to Adla Yada, but we already know the halacha is that on Purim it is Adla, so how do we reconcile that, right? So we're going to get to that. We're working our way towards exactly this point. Okay, so now this preparation, chapter 6, will take us back to the story of Rabba and Reb Zera. But before we get to Rabba and Reb Zera, there's one point that's not fully addressed here, that's focused on, that's touched on actually in the next Sicha, in Likutei Sichos, Chelek Lamed Aleph, that I want to just bring up this point, which is ultimately the Rebbe doesn't spell it out so clearly here, but I started working towards it in the beginning in our little review before we started reading, is ultimately. They drink wine or they did not drink wine? They did drink wine. Physically, they did actually drink wine. And they were even physically drunk, you could say. So now we already understand the whole inside story and the other side of it and what they did and the whole thing. But what's the deal with the drinking of the wine? Right? So wine as a metaphor we got. But what about the actual drinking wine? So the point is that drinking wine, and this is, the Rebbe alludes to it in a way by talking about nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom, entering in peace and coming out in peace, that you have to enter in peace. Wine, as we know, it could lessen inhibition. It takes away. Sometimes a person's so stuck in their shell, and a little bit of alcohol helps them loosen that shell, right? So the Shalah, the Rebbe quotes the Shalah there. The Shalah in Shara Esia says he talks over there about. He's talking there about different things that a person should do and not do, different character traits and things, and he talks about eating and what a person shouldn't overeat and what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, and then he talks about drinking. And he makes a statement, one should not drink alcohol. He's very against drinking. And he goes on a whole thing about that. And then he says, but I need to defend some of my colleagues. And he says, but we find people that did drink. Great people, great sages that drank. And he actually brings two instances from the Gemara about teachers, that they used to get teachers a little drunk, and Rabbi Akiva celebrated for his son, and every time he said, L'chaim, for the Chachamim, so the Gemara says over there, every time, Rabbi Akiva made Rabbi Akiva, or Rabbi Shimon, I think it was Rabbi, whatever, I remember. He said, L'chai Rabbanon B'Talmidein or something, he would say L'chaim he would toast the sages. So they asked, why is he toasting the sages? This is the Shalaz asking, why toasting the sages, Dafka? Because there are sages that would drink. And why would he say l'chaim to the sages? Because they need extra protection when they drink. But why they're drinking in the first place if you need protection to drink? So he explains this idea, that there are great sages. Then he cites two instances from the Gemara, but he even mentions even contemporaries of his, even rabbis that were alive when he was talking about this. Great sages, I don't know what he's referring to, but that would drink and celebrate. And he says, why? Because when they would do this, what would happen? They would be opening up and revealing secrets of Torah and Torah insights that they wouldn't do when they were sober. So you see that what did it lead to? It led to revealing deeper mystic concepts, deeper insights from the Torah that they wouldn't otherwise do. So the drinking would loosen, in a sense, that grip, that inhibition, but in a positive way. So, and again, the point is, nichnas b'shalom. If you go to drink just to let off some steam or to take off the edge or to whatever, then it's going to have disastrous things because you're going in selfishly. But if you're going in selflessly, obviously within reason, then it can have a positive effect. There's somebody who would tell me all the time about a certain individual he's seen who once got very, very drunk. I was a yeshiva student who probably shouldn't have gotten drunk. But it made a huge impression on him because it was the first time he saw somebody, and it was somebody that wasn't that old. He was maybe 22, 23 years old. And he was completely drunk. And yet, while he was drunk, all he kept doing was teaching more and more Torah. This boy, he was somewhat knowledgeable, and that's all he was doing. And he kept encouraging people and teaching, and he had never seen anything like that. Anytime he sees people drunk, it's always the ugliest side of those people. So this idea, this concept is something that we can appreciate. So when it's done in that way, when it's not, then it's totally always off limits. It's never okay, not even on Purim, to drink for it to lead to recklessness or to more of your own ego coming out and expanding. That's never acceptable. But when it's nichnas b'shalom, it's b'shalom. So the Shalah actually talks about, this is in the Shalah, this is 16th century stuff, who says that, and quite an authority, that kind of drinking is at the end he says anyway he still shouldn't drink, but he goes through it a whole at length, this idea of how there's that correlation between the metaphorical drinking, the mysteries of Torah, being drunk on godliness, and the actual physical drinking. Okay, Vav. After this introduction, we can now understand the story that we're talking about Rabba and Rab Zera. Hashem Rabba, the name Rabba, Meir al Inyan Shal Gadlus. The name Rabba means great, big. The Ilu Hashem Rab Zera, Meir al Inyan Shal Katnus, Melashin Zeira. The name Zera is small. So Rabba represents big, Rab Zera is small. That's what their names imply. V'hinei Rabba v'Rab Zera. So, and obviously a name is significant, as we're going to learn later as well inside, that the name is significant, and the name tells you a lot about the character and the capacity and the abilities of the person. So when we say Rabba, we call him Rabba, that means of greater capacity, and when we say Rab Zera, that means of smaller capacity. Rab Zera, we know famously, Rab Zera wanted to make Aliyah, move to Israel, and study Torah in Eretz Yisrael, and Torah in Eretz Yisrael was in a more advanced level, and so he had to fast in order to forget everything he had learned in order to be able to learn that. Meaning that represents a smallness of his capacity, that he couldn't handle it all. He needed to make that space. Anyway, so V'hinei Rabba v'Rab Zera avdu sudas Purim b'adei adadi. Rabba and Rab Zera have the Purim feast together. Since Purim, everybody needs to gather together, unite as one, minarva ad zaken, from young to old. We have to give gifts of food to each other, and we give charity, meaning there's a coming together, a unity that's expressed in Purim, a togetherness. It doesn't matter rich or poor, you don't have, big, small, all come together. So therefore, in that spirit of Purim, Ratza Rabba, Shenyane Gadlus Rabba, who's big, wanted Lis Achidim Rab Zera Shenyane Katnas. He wanted to connect with Rab Zera, who is small. Kedei Lifo by Ilay Gadol Yesa. He wanted to share with him that experience. So this is the meaning then of Ifsum, that they got drunk. This literal drinking, and we know that they drank, we're saying that they actually drank and they got drunk, is connected to the wine of Torah, the secrets of Torah. When we say that they got drunk, what does it mean they got drunk? It means that what was going on at that feast was that there were big secrets of the Torah they were getting drunk on Torah, meaning that there were deep secrets of Torah that Rabba was sharing with Rab Zera. And then they did it in a way of to the point of total selfless, losing all of self-awareness. All of that was gone. They were totally absorbed in that and consumed by the mystery of God. And this happened to both of them to the point that they were both drunk. They were both intoxicated by this. Remember, we asked earlier also why Rashi says Ifsum, that they were both drunk. Both Rabba and Rab Zera. Why is it necessary to know that Rab Zera was drunk? So, it doesn't spell it out clearly here, I don't think. But the point is, because it wasn't that Rabba did something in his drunkenness. The way we understood the story simply is Rabba was drunk, got reckless, and did something terrible, right? But here the point is we're saying that what does it mean they were drunk? It was on the mysteries of Torah and the secrets of Torah, and Rabba wanted to share that with Rab Zera, so it's important to know that they were both drunk. Rab Zera was brought to a state of drunkenness. It's an integral part of the story, as we're going to see. But what was the result? The result was different between them. Rab Zera, who's smaller, of smaller capacity, couldn't handle what he was experiencing. And that caused him to expire, to have kalesa nefesh, that he expired. He wasn't killed. Yeah, he expired. That's why we're saying that he was drunk. Right? And there was actually, not like the Marsha was saying and the Yavitz was saying that it looked like he died, he got sick, he got deathly ill. He actually died. Just like Nadav and Avihu that actually died. Rabba was able to handle it. He had bigger capacity. Therefore he didn't expire as a result. If you're saying that Rab Zera expired from his own drunkenness, so why is the Rabba at fault? Why are we saying that the story is described as Rabba being the one to perpetrate it? So now we can understand it. Isa b'Gemara, the Gemara says, Ein v'shachat alo mashach. The Gemara in Chulin says, we talk about shchita. The concept of shchita is that in order for shechting an animal, for slaughtering an animal to be valid, there's a double motion. You have to you slide the knife forward and back. So the Gemara says, Ein v'shachat alo mashach. That v'shachat, when we use the term shchita, to slaughter, the word in Hebrew is shchita. So shchita, the word shchita means to pull, to draw. mashach, meshicha, to draw. Why is it that shchita, that slaughtering, is meshicha, is drawing? So that's the literal understanding, that the halachic aspect. But why is that the halacha, that shchita necessitates drawing? So it explains, because what's shchita all about? Slaughtering all about? It's about elevating. Because when a person slaughters an animal, a kosher animal, you now make the animal fit for consumption. And what happens as a result when you consume the animal? The animal goes up the food chain. It goes from being an animal to becoming part of a human being. He becomes a human. As we know, that is explained in many places, that there's a prohibition against being cruel to animals. Shchita, as humane as it is, as painless as it makes it for the animal, it'd be less painful if you didn't bother the animal at all, right? Just leave it alone, let it live out its life. So why does that override the idea of tzar b'alachayim? It's because because ultimately it's for the animal's benefit that the animal's going up the food chain becomes part of the human being. So the Rambam says famously, but the Rambam says in the Yad HaChazaka, so it's in halacha, not like in Moeder Nevuchim, not just philosophy. He says that anybody who says that shchita, the reason that shchita is regulated the way it is because of the prohibition against being cruel to animals. If that was really the case, he says, then God would outlaw shchita altogether. We shouldn't be able. We should all be vegan, right? So it's not the case. What's the justification then for it? Is that you're elevating the animal. The animal is now becoming part of you, fueling that connection to God, is becoming part of the human being. It's a rising food chain. And then what's the method to do it? Only obviously in a way that causes the least suffering and almost virtually no suffering to the animal. But what's the point of shchita? What's v'shachat? Umashach, to draw, to elevate, to lift up. That's what shchita is about. So the process of shchita, when we talk about an animal, is elevating the animal. And the same is true here when we talk about Rab Zera and Rabba. Obinyanenu, so getting back to our situation, our story, Hapirj the Rabba shachtel Rab Zerahu, Sherabba Moshach. The Rabba pulled, shachat, the hella, es Rab Zera, l'daga nailis shaloi be'erech. Klal. Rabba was on a higher level than Rab Zera, and therefore Rabba wanted to bring Rab Zera up to his level. So what does v'shachat mean?
He didn't actually.
So here's the genius over here of the explanation, is that on the one hand there was a literal shchita, there's a literal slaughtering of Reb Zera, but not with a knife. It wasn't a slitting of a throat. It was v'shachat, meaning he lifted him up and he picked him up so high beyond where he can go until he expired. And so this resolves those problems, because like we said earlier in the beginning, the commentaries are all struggling with this. It looked like he shechted him. He didn't do it. He did something. It looked here. He did. He was the one who brought about Reb Zera's expiration, but not by knife, by through shchita. It doesn't say anywhere that he picked up a knife. It just says that he shechted him. What does it mean? He shechted him. He elevated him. He lifted him up, but he picked him up too high. He picked him up too high. So this resolves these problems. Where on the one hand he brings about his death. On the other hand, he doesn't murder him, and he's not violent, and he's not shedding blood, and suddenly everything comes together. But we still have some loose ends that we have to tie. How are we doing on time? So we're done. So we'll continue, Mr. Shem.